Hello, everyone. Welcome back to What's the Rate? I'm your host, Brianne Lyons, and this is the show where we get into the raw and real of pursuing creative success as a self-funded indie artist in your 20s in New York City. And this is the resource season. And I am here with Isabella Stefano. She is an entrepreneur and new beauty founder, and she has worked with multiple brands, celebrities, and also beauty and fashion brands as well. And she's an amazing creative director, and I'm so happy to have you here. So welcome to the show.
It's great to see you offset.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, on the Mac Nude shoot.
Yes.
Yeah, because Parker had on the project prior to that, it was DKNY with Kaya Gerber, and I was on Lockup, and he was like, oh, I also have another set for you if you'd like to be on. And then that's how I met you. You also are a Tishy, BFA in drama. So,
that's correct.
NYU is heavy on this show. But just talk to me about who you are now, and also just that transition from college into your career.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Parker, for introducing us. Yeah. So happy to know you, and thank you so much for having me here today. In terms of the transition out of college, well, I'm going to age myself. I graduated in 2010, so this is a long time ago. And when I graduated, social media was not really a thing. It was just coming on the scene. And while I studied acting and I did the conservatory program at Tisch for my BFA, in the last 2 years of that program, you have the room to do more internships. You have the space in your schedule to pursue more academics, internships, on-the-job experience, what have you. During that time, I was able to get an internship with my first boss ever, who funnily enough is someone that I still talk to today and help out with certain projects. But basically, he owned and still owns a celebrity marketing company. And at the time, what we were doing was largely brand sponsorships for things like Sundance Film Festival. We had a huge collaboration with Axe, actually, body products at that time. But then what we started doing for the first time ever, really, was selling celebrity social. So, for example, we would engage Lindsay Lohan to tweet about this book, and she would get paid like $25,000 or whatever it was at the time. For tweeting about the book. Or Paris Hilton would post about going to Marquee, and she would get paid X amount of dollars for doing that. So this was really the very beginning of this social exchange that was happening, and this marketplace that was growing around talent on social media. And that was my only experience with social media. But when I graduated, I was dating someone, transparently, in Los Angeles, and I was spending a lot of time in LA, and obviously the entertainment industry is largely based there, so I had the opportunity to move there, and I thought, hey, why not? So I'm gonna go be a Cali girl for a little bit. And I got to California, and I'm like, well, I need a job. And how do I go about doing that? And actually, my ex, the person I was dating at the time, gave me some of the best job hunting advice that I've ever gotten. And basically, he said to me, listen, look up the top Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 businesses that are headquarters in Los Angeles. Then rank them on a list of where you'd want to work the most to the least, because you should work for one of these companies. And I find out that Barbie is based in Los Angeles at Mattel. And I said, that's where I want to work. I want to work for Barbie, because obviously it was very nostalgic for me. I grew up with Barbies. I'm like very into that stuff. So I made it my mission. I will get a job at Barbie. And by the way, that's how I got into Tisch. I didn't apply anywhere else. I said, I will go to Tisch. And I made it happen. And so I do believe that a lot of it is your own conviction and belief in yourself, you know, and sort of delusional a little bit. You have to be a little delusional about your goals. And so with Mattel, I said, okay, this is number one on my list. And I went on LinkedIn and I looked at Mattel, and I saw that 2 degrees of separation to my friend was someone that worked at Mattel. So that person introduced me to the person that worked at Mattel. And we did like a general phone call, which I always recommend. Even if they don't have the job that you're looking for, get an informational interview. Just get in the door. Like, do anything to talk to someone inside the brand. And so that's what I did. And her name was Whitney Gosden. I actually haven't spoken to her in a really long time, but she had a huge impact on my career. And I'm super grateful for her for creating that opportunity for me, because at that time, especially, Mattel was a place that unless you had an MBA, you were never getting a job there. So I have this informational interview with Whitney, and she, a few months later, gets me invited in to interview for Barbie for a brand analyst role. I was up against MBAs. I tanked the interview, like terrible. I had no idea what I was talking about. I answered every question wrong. Like, it was embarrassing. Okay. And I was so upset. I'm like, I'm not going to work at Barbie. And so then I kept job hunting, and I actually got a job at this amazing ad agency called Gorilla Nation Media. And I was about a week out from starting that job, and I get a call from Mattel. This is like months later. And they said, hey, we remember from your informational interview and when you came in to explore the brand analyst position that you mentioned social media and that you've been doing work in social media. Well, funnily enough, we are building our first ever social media team. Would you like to interview for the social media team? And I said, well, quite frankly, there's nowhere in the world that I'd rather work than Barbie, than Mattel. But I'm starting a job in 3 days. Like, what do I do? I said, can you come in today? Sure, I'll be there in an hour. Literally, it was like an hour and a half away from where I was. So I got there as soon as I could. And I interviewed, and in record speed, they offered me the job. And so I called Gorilla Nation Media and I said, listen, I don't know how to tell you this. I was so excited to come work for you guys. I'm so grateful for all the time you took offering me this position, but I just got my dream job offered to me. And they said, oh, where is it? I said, Mattel. I'm going to go work for Mattel. They said, you need to take that job. Wow. And they were so gracious about it. They were so kind to me. And that's how I got my first job at Mattel. I think I was hire number 3 on the team. Nobody inside the organization knew anything about social media. I think I was probably one of the most hated employees by the marketing team because they're like, what is this? Like, it went against all traditional marketing, but it set me up for success in the organization because I was no longer really competing with the MBAs because I had this unique experience that you couldn't really study. It's just experience because no one knew the landscape. It's like today with AI, it's a lot of unknown territory, uncharted territory. So that's how I got my foot in the door. And I will say that that's pretty much how I've gotten any job that I've ever gotten is through connections. And I've worked really amazing places, and persistence, connections, polish, the way you follow up on those opportunities and close the loop on those opportunities, that's how I got those jobs.
Nice. I do want to get into that and how you build the concepts and how you make a plan. I saw that you say that social media is the nucleus, right? So just talk to me about your process with building a concept.
Yeah. So, and this is obviously evolving a lot right now, even how we define social media, what it means, how people interact with it is changing right now in this moment. So what I say now is not necessarily like the truth in 2 months, 3 months, a week, everything's changing so quickly. But what it really comes down to for me is I start with human emotion. So whenever I am building a concept, I don't start with the product. Mm-hmm. And the product can be a person too, like the talent, because talent is brand also. And I know all of these things. Like, I know what the product priorities are. I know who the talent is and what's important to them. Like, these are all informs, right? And I have this knowledge, but that's not actually where I start when I go to concept. I start with the way that I want to make people feel. Like, what experience do I want to impart? What feeling, what emotion do I want to leave behind or create for someone? Mm-hmm. And that's where I start. And then it is, okay, what is a relatable story? And obviously with the context of the brand, that starts to come in, whether it be talent or like a physical or consumer brand. You start thinking about that context. So how do I tell a story that's like contextually relevant to this person, place, or thing, but is still driven by emotional priorities, like how I want someone to feel. And then once I've sort of got the baseline story down, then I start to layer in the product priorities, like the business priorities. And they were always there from the beginning because I knew them, like as part of the intake or the brief to this project. I'm understanding the context, but again, I start with the feeling and then I layer on the business priorities. And I don't do just like slap them onto a story. It's about how can I authentically weave this in to this narrative that I've created. So a great example of that is one of my favorite projects ever to this day, which is In Bed with My Calvins, which was a YouTube first series that I created not long before I left Calvin Klein. It's probably like the biggest last project that I did before I left CK. And what I love about that is it's a great example, probably the best example I have of what I refer to as a content franchise, which it's funny, everyone's talking about this now, and it's a little frustrating because I'm like, I've been screaming this from the rooftops for 10 years and people look at me like I have 5 heads and now everyone's saying it. But if you think about your brand, whether that's a person, place, or thing, as a media entity that transcends that person, place, or thing, and it has programming. And what is that programming? It's a bunch of serialized episodic content usually, and that comes to life in the form of a content franchise. That franchise, you build equity in that franchise by, hey, having this video series, but there can be like physical event extensions of that, but they all ladder back to this same franchise. So In Bed with My Calvins is a great example of that because basically what happened is we decided to throw a pajama party for the holidays. And I was told, oh, you're going to have 45 minutes with Kendall Jenner, Evan Mock, like these different celebrities. Do interview videos with them. And I basically said, no, I'm not doing that. Nobody cares. Like, it's so boring. I don't care what you ate for breakfast. I don't care what your favorite pair of jeans is. Like, nobody cares. How can we make this more interesting? Well, it's a PJ party, right? So I thought, oh, well, all right, I'll do a Q&A with them in bed because that's sexy Calvin. It's a little polarizing, just a little bit. It's like teasing you a little bit, which is the whole point of Calvin, right? Just a little poke. And then the questions are by nature more intimate, right? Because you're in bed. So every episode of that series followed a similar structure. And that's really important when you're creating a series or a content franchise. It's like lock in a format and continue to reinforce it. So every episode started with said talent letting you into the room. Then we asked them a few leading questions. then there was a plot twist. Like with Emma Chamberlain, her cat called, from the reception, which is not, it's like even a little absurdist, right? But it's Emma. So it makes sense for Emma Chamberlain because she's obsessed with her cat. She's always talking about her cat on the vlog. Her audience has a relationship with the cat, emotional again. So plot twist. Then go back to some more intimate questions. Then said talent, oh, I got to get ready for the Calvin Klein PJ party. Product moment. This is what I'm going to wear. But at no point in that video am I selling you. Mm-hmm. I'm subliminally selling you. Like, because you're like, oh, this is cool. This is fun. This is entertaining. That made me laugh. Oh, that made me like think a little, you know. But it's never leading with that. Mm-hmm. So my concepting always starts from a much more genuine place where the intent is human connection. Yeah. And then you layer in the business priorities within that. Like I told you, the get ready with me moment. We had to have a product moment, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not delivered in the hard sell. Like it would be totally different if I'm like, Kendall, what are your favorite CK jeans? Yeah. My favorite CK jeans are what? Nobody cares. Like literally nobody cares because you didn't make me feel anything. You just like tried to sell me something. Yeah. But if you entertain me and I'm like, oh, I like the pants she's wearing. What are those pants? Mm-hmm. You know? So that's how I approach it. I hope that answered your question, but that's how I approach it.
Yeah, making it a lot more personable.
Yes.
Yeah, and like you were saying, relatable, because a PJ party is kind of like, oh, like nostalgic a bit, exactly. You know? And I feel like everybody's had a PJ party.
And it's like, oh, I'm watching a video of Kendall Jenner being interviewed in bed. That's like sexy. It's like intimate. It's different. It's not like every behind the scenes video that she's doing with every other brand. And more than anything, it's ownable for Calvin Klein. It's authentic to Calvin Klein. It's an underwear brand more than anything else. When do we wear our underwear the most? Like in bed. Right. So it totally aligns, you know?
Yeah. So I'm curious about the extent of research you do, because to know little details like that, not only about the talent, but also the brand, right? And these are pretty like big name brands. So like we all kind of have some type of like background context, right? Just from it being exposed to it all the time. But how much research and how in depth do you go? And what are the elements that you kind of seek out when it comes to like bringing all of this together and doing some proper research?
I start with their channels if they have them, which they usually do. Looking at their content, not the branded content necessarily, but like them as the person. Mm-hmm. Then I will do a bunch of research on like their career priorities. I'll talk to their management or agent, understand like what are they working on. Definitely a deep dive on like recent projects, other collaborations. What are they passionate about? Like I said to you with Emma Chamberlain, I only knew that about her cat because I watched like 100 videos. Mm-hmm. So the research is super important for context. Like you have to do a deep dive, but from a more human perspective, I'm less interested in like what the tabloids are saying, you know, or how other people are writing about the person. Yes, I'll look at press and those things as well, but I'm not as interested in that. I'm more interested in what are they putting out into the world. And this doesn't work for every single talent because some talent are very private. Yeah. You know, and so you don't really know. And I've worked with talent like that before, and there is a whole warming up period, getting to know that person, whether that's that person directly, which I've had the opportunity to do, or the people around them. But yeah, research is super important.
Yeah. So can you talk to us a little bit more about Issa URL and your brand and your team?
Sure. Yeah. So for the last about 5 years, I've had a creative agency called Issa, which is part of my name, but it also completes a sentence. So url.com is my website. But basically, I created this agency on the philosophy that social media is the nucleus of any brand. And I think that's still true today. It's evolving. But social is the most powerful, and in a lot of ways, genuine people might argue with this, and I don't blame them, but like, it's the most direct contact that you have with your consumer that you can control, kind of. Okay. You're always at the liberty of the algorithm. But if you study it, you can understand it well enough to play into it, right? And make it work for you. So yeah, I think that my work has really been about primarily storytelling, and obviously it's fallen into the categories primarily of celebrity, fashion, and beauty. But at the end of the day, what I do is industry agnostic. So my approach to brand building starts with storytelling, and almost anything can be considered storytelling. So I don't just do content. I can do events, seating programs, educational workshops, like whatever it is. It can be a physical touch point as well, like I said, but it really starts with storytelling. That's what I have mastered, is how do I take this talent or brand and channel a story that transcends their core product, and it leads with emotion first and the goal of human connection, and the sell comes after. Right? And that you often see is where you see the highest conversion, because people they want more, they want to feel something. And that's what's going to motivate them to take action more than just hard selling someone on like, this is the best product. And that kind of goes against a lot of traditional marketing training, right? So when I started my agency, I really wanted to take my vision for how brands should market, build equity, through more authentic storytelling versus the hard traditional sell.
Do you ever feel pressured or like nervous about turnout? You know what I'm saying? I know you've been doing this for a long time, but if you ever feel that way, how do you deal with that? And what does that look like, Of
course I feel pressure. Of course. Everyone does, whether they admit it or not. But for me, at this point in my career, it's like in my bones, Like I intuitively know if something's going to work or not. I've also always been a very performance-driven creative. So while I woo-woo and la-la and emotion this, and I've just been talking about that, that's so important. But there's also a whole data-driven component to what I do. And I probably should have mentioned this before, but I also look at whenever possible, the historical data for a given person, place, or thing. So if I'm working with a talent, for example, and I'm looking at hundreds of their videos, I'm also looking at what's resonating the most with their audience. And so I really believe that looking at, say you're running a brand account, for example, or you work for a brand and you need to come up with a concept, in addition to that emotional component, the human connection that you want to strive to create with your customer, you should look at the data. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you have 10 million followers or 100. Obviously, 10 million is a much larger sample size for study, we'll call it. But you need to nurture the followers you have. So if 35 of those 100 followers are responding to your content and they're all responding to a certain kind of content, lean into that. That's a learning for you. Those are your people. That's what's working. It doesn't really matter how big or small. You go into the data and you develop insights based on what you can spot, right? And there's a qualitative and a quantitative analysis. So I'm looking at the numbers, but I'm also looking at the comments. What is the aesthetic that's resonating the most? And kind of at this point, it's basically intuitive, but that takes a long time. And it wasn't always intuitive, but like thinking, okay, how do these things that I'm picking out, like, oh, the color yellow, all of these top posts have the color yellow in them. It's not a perfect statistical test, but it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll have her wear a yellow shirt in this video because like every single one of these is yellow. And then when she talks about her dog, those videos pop off. Like everyone wants the dog videos, or she's cooking, or when she's eating pizza, or whatever it is. And then it's really about test and learn. I like to think of my campaigns and content as little science experiments. So my concept is my hypothesis. Like, this is what's going to resonate with people. And then you test, learn, optimize. So you put it out into the world, you get the feedback, you see what people are responding to, iterate, do it again, but tweaked based on what you learned from the last time. Yeah. Now, it's obviously different if you're working at the same brand. Like I was working at Calvin Klein, so I had so many opportunities to just test, learn, and optimize. And that's why I know so much about Calvin Klein, because I worked there, you know? So obviously there was an element of my training and onboarding that dealt with the brand DNA, which was reinforced on a daily basis within my job. But then I also made a point of really digging into the data and seeing what I could discover about our community, both qualitatively and quantitatively.
If you have any advice at all as far as like how a creative, who they are their own brand, right, and they're representing themselves, like how they should go about defining what that is for themselves on the internet. Does that make sense? Like having their own brand on the internet or presenting themselves on the internet. I know it's more so of an indie type of situation because it's not working with brands or collaborating with like fashion and celebrity, but like in terms of just overall general social media presence advice, if you have any.
So I think actually this will resonate with you because they teach you this in acting when you're really seriously studying acting and you're doing scene study or even an audition training. Strong choice. Make a strong choice. Otherwise, you're just going to blend, right? And you're not going to stand out. So have a strong point of view that's uniquely yours. And that's all that matters. And it's not necessarily going to hit right away. You have to test, learn, optimize. So again, think everything you put out into the world is a hypothesis. It's your hypothesis. Oh, I think people will get this. This speaks to me. This will speak to them. This resonates. Like this is an expression of what I'm trying to communicate or how I'm trying to connect with people. So that's number one, is think of everything you put out into the world as a science experiment. Like go back to your Bunsen burner day. I'm probably, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Science class. But I'm serious. Like make a guess, put it out. And if it flops, don't be like, oh my God, it flopped. Like, I'm a loser. No. Be like, why did this flop? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What's the production quality? What am I talking about? Of the two people that commented, what did they say? What can I deduce from that? Like, think deep on all of those learnings, even if they're small, even if it's only a few people. Mm-hmm. And then double down on what's working. The other thing is stop making it all about you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Nobody cares. Literally nobody cares.
Wait, say more. What do you mean don't make it about you?
Because for consumers, and I think this is so important in marketing too, so many brands talk to themselves. Like, we make the best sheets with 100,000 ply Egyptian cotton. And don't you just see these are like the best sheets ever? Nobody cares. So oftentimes I see a lot of creatives fall into this trap, or any anyone putting themselves out into the world. They're like, this is what I want people to know about me. This is what I want to say. That's the wrong way to think about it. You need to think about, who is my target audience? What do they need to hear? What do they need from me? What can I give them that is of value and has utility? So stop thinking about what's important to me. And I'm not saying those things aren't valuable. You need to know what's important to you, what your values are, what interests you, what your passions are, what your point of difference is. Strong choice, right? But you make all those strong choices when you actually go present it to the world. It's not about what you want to say. It's about what they need to feel, to listen. Like, what is going to resonate? But oftentimes, creatives, especially I think traditional art directors, fall into this trap a lot, where they're like, this is what it needs to look like. The lighting is X, the poses look like this, and the seamless is blue. And that's the concept. And it's like, that gives me nothing. It's just about what you want it to look like. But start with, what are you trying to make people feel? Like, what is your purpose? Beyond like, oh, I want to be a famous actor or like a award-winning creative director. Nobody cares. Like, you care, but that's not what's important. You need to know what you care about and what you stand for, but you need to find the point of human connection and where those two things interact, and stop telling people what you want to say and think more about what they need to hear and feel. Yeah. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. This kind of connects to what I was talking to my therapist about yesterday, but she was just talking about purpose versus passion, right? Yes. And she was like, Brianna, maybe being an actor and being in the spotlight and everything isn't your purpose, but it's your passion. And I was like, don't say that. My whole life has been being in the spotlight. Like, do not try to crush that dream for me. But I'm not saying that she's crushing my dreams, but you get what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying.
I don't want to steer off of that path because I've been tunnel vision on that goal for so long, for my entire life. But just going back to the human connection element, I feel like that is my purpose, is like sitting here having these honest conversations and like showing them and showing vulnerability to other people, right? And humility and authenticity, right? And I really do believe that I'm able to do that through my passion, which is acting, which is storytelling, right? So I like how you, even though it is a lot of like with social media, it's a lot of marketing and like putting yourself out there, and this is what I have, this is who I am, but the most important bit of it is, how are you able to connect? You know what I'm saying? And what do people need right now? What do they need to hear right now?
That's all. I mean, it's literally survival. Yeah. People need it to survive. Human connection. Yeah. Connection. So, and also I just think it adds more purpose, depth to your creative work. I'm not just putting things out into the world because they're pretty and they look cool. I've never been like that. That's the last layer. It starts with like, this is the story. This is how people are going to feel. And then the last layer is the icing. What does it look like? What's the lighting? Where is it shot? What are they wearing? How's the hair? What's the makeup? All these things are really important. But it's like the last thing that I'm thinking about. Yeah. I start with the realist thing, which is the most important. And especially in today's world where, you know, in many ways tech can, and by the way, I'm like such a techie person, such a tech forward person, but it can disconnect us from that, right? Very easily. Mm-hmm. So more than anything now, humans are craving community and connection, like in a tangible way. So if you can tap into that and make someone feel seen or understood or heard or noticed, you tell a story that resonates, that they're like, oh, like, I thought I was the only person that felt that way. That's like what people don't even realize they love so much about the TikTok algorithm, that it's interest-based, right? Instead of like following and all this performative behavior. And that's why I love it so much more than any other social algorithm, because it is the most genuine in that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to serve me a certain piece of content necessarily because this person has a bajillion followers and they look cute. You know what I mean? Within the context of what they think I think is cute. But it's more like deep. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
So I think that's also really important is, and it'll be more fulfilling in your creative work if you're going a little deeper. It's art too. A fashion campaign is art.
Yeah.
It's a different, but like it doesn't just have to be an aesthetic performative expression. That's when it flops, because nobody can connect to that. You know, and something can still be really elevated, aspirational, and a little bit of out of touch. But if you hit the right emotional notes, it will resonate at mass. You know, I don't know why I'm thinking of this example, but like Titanic is a great example of this. Like it's so luxurious, it's so lavish, it's like so out of touch, right? But why does everyone love Titanic? What is Titanic about?
Love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And love is actually the number one tool that you have. Love is the most normalizing, level setting tool that you have with storytelling, because everyone on this planet, from the president down to, you know, a young child, can understand the concept of love. And they know what that feels like usually. And yes, we have different definitions of it. But there's like this human understanding, right? This feeling that we all understand. And it breaks like social barriers. So, you know, I actually think Titanic is a great example of that, right? Because like it's one of the most iconic, recognized films of our generations, and by people that come from all sorts of backgrounds. But what are we all responding to? One basic human emotion. So that's another thing. I always think about strip it back. What are the basic human emotions? And if you're working on a concept or a storyline and you can strip it back to hunger, love, death, like these basic human things that we all go through, regardless of where we stand, that's pretty powerful. And I would hypothesize it'll usually resonate.
So, you know something, I honestly want to bring this in the context of anybody who does want to partner and work with brands and do like deals and creative decks and just overall just creative direction, right? So how do you recommend young creative directors and young visionaries in NYC build a life that's both financially sustainable and creatively fulfilling?
I think the advice I can give with the longest expiration date is that you must embrace AI. You must embrace technology, become an early adopter, because that will ultimately set you apart. I think a wonderful example of someone in creative that I super admire is Sevda Albers. And she's an incredible photographer, creative, traditionally trained, but she's now like a badass AI boss bitch, okay? She generates whole brand campaigns using her incredible prompting capabilities. She now sells courses on how to improve your prompting. There's so many resources out there to learn how to prompt. It's really the most important thing is what you give it. That's what's going to inform what you get back, right? And I'm also a big believer that you need to invest in the right tools for yourself. So yeah, $200 a month for ChatGPT Pro sounds like really expensive, right? Well, find 4 friends that you can share the account with because you need to use it, because you're not going to have as strong material to work with if you're just using the free version. And I think a lot of times creatives can be really sensitive. We just are sensitive, right? I'm a sensitive person, but when it comes to my work, I'm super tough. I'm not sensitive. You can tell me that you think what I just showed you is like not good. I'm like, oh, please tell me more. Why? And, you know, I take that in within the context and perspective that I have, what I know to be true, but I'm always listening for feedback. And I'm not scared to share my ideas. I think collaborativeness, like being a collaborative person, a collaborative artist is also super important. I think traditionally creatives, especially creative directors, art directors, were taught to be like super cagey with their work. And that's actually like a huge pet peeve of mine is when I'm like working with someone and they don't want to collaborate. They're just like, I'll show you when it's done. Like, I'll show you when it's done. Like when it's perfect. It's like, okay, well, we're on the same team, you know? So let's collaborate. Right. Like, let me see what you're doing and like maybe I can add value from a different perspective. So I think open-mindedness, not too precious, and being really freaking resourceful. So like I said, find 3 or 4 friends that you can share a ChatGPT account. Make sure you have the best tools and resources. And don't shy away and back away from what's on the forefront. My entire career has been on the forefront. I started in social media in 2010 when people were like, what's social media? They didn't even know what it was. And I'm like, well, social media is going to be the next big thing. And guess what? It was. And that's how I feel about AI. I've been using AI for a long time. And I embrace it instead of being like, oh, must protect you're not going to stop it. And people are going to run circles around you who know how to prompt, how to embrace, and how to integrate the tech into their workflow. And then to answer your question about being a sort of broke creative in New York City, as we usually are, right? It's kind of the name of the game, right? Until it's not, until you hit it. So stay strong and be resourceful. If there's one thing, I'm really resourceful. And I've had a lot of privileges in my life that have opened doors for me that wouldn't have otherwise existed or opened, right? So I'm fully aware of that. But I am really freaking resourceful. So it's like, how can I hustle? How can you also, and this happens a lot in PR and creative and marketing, like you have this skill, I have that skill, let's trade. Because I need your help and you need mine. So what assets do you have to share with others? Oh, maybe I don't have the money to pay this person, but I could actually really help them with this other thing. So maybe we can create some sort of exchange. Like, hey, I'll help you with you writing your book, editing your book. Will you help me retouch these photos? collaboration, right? So resourcefulness, collaboration, hustle. That's my advice.
Yeah. So with that, is there any moment or experience that gave you some game or like completely pivoted the way that you approach your work or how you move within your career field?
Many moments. But the one, when you ask me that question, what sticks out to me the most is probably when I left Calvin Klein and started my own creative agency. So it was during the pandemic. And I actually was part of the 25% of employees that did not get furloughed. So my entire team was furloughed, but I was not. So I was like doing the work for the entire team, basically. And then after several months of those people being furloughed and me working for a 25% pay cut, they let me go and brought back the furloughs. I'm just a number on the spreadsheet. So that was like, what? And I mean, transparently, when it first happened, I did not take it well at all. But it was actually a mentor of mine that like put it all into perspective for me and I said, well, I called her. I was like, oh my God, I just got laid off. Like, I can't believe I just got laid off. It's unbelievable. I need to get another job, but like it's COVID. How am I going to get another job? She was like, girl, you don't need to get another job. It's like, don't ever go back. Start a company. So that day I went on LegalZoom.com. I created my LLC. And the next day I started reaching out to all of the people that I could think of. I tripled my income like very quickly. So, you know, sometimes our biggest disappointments become our biggest opportunities. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, getting laid off is not a fun experience, regardless of the context or circumstances. It's a hard pill to swallow, even though at this stage, I know what that really means. It's not emotional at all, because you have to understand that a large corporation, you're a number on a spreadsheet. So remember that. Don't give your soul to a brand that is not your own. Don't do that, because I did that. I gave too much of myself. So that's why when it ended, it was so devastating, you know, because so much of my identity, my self-worth, everything was so wrapped up in my job. And so I think, you know, if I were to go back in time, I would have created and maintained much stronger boundaries around that. But that's the lesson I learned through that process. So I hope that answered your question, but that was probably one of the most career-defining moments for me, because obviously it launched my career as an entrepreneur. Although I think I was kind of always an entrepreneur. I don't think I should have spent 12 years working for someone else. But then again, had I not done that, I wouldn't have all of the network that I have today, and also the legitimate experience, the resume, right? So that when I call up someone at Apple or whatever it is, and they look at my resume and they see where I've worked, they're like, oh, this person is legit.
I kind of want to chat more about boundaries and personal boundaries, just socially, right? So I feel like you're an amazing people person. You come in and you light up the room. And the way you socialize, it feels so seamless, right? So just talk to me about how you're able to navigate, you know, sometimes difficult conversations with setting boundaries, with like people you love working with, even friends that you might be working with, you know what I mean? And maintaining a healthy and positive connection, right? Industry connection, professional connection, but also clarifying boundaries.
So maybe I'm going to say something that some people might find a little controversial if taken the wrong way, but know your place. Like, if I'm just starting something and I've never done it before and I'm working with someone who's been doing it for 15 years, observe, learn, incorporate into your process. And when I say know your place, I don't mean don't speak up, don't have a voice. I'm a big believer in that. And you've been on my team before, so you should know that I think it's wonderful that Gen Z has created a lot more balance in the workplace, quite frankly, because you guys have no idea, like, what we were raised in, like us millennials.
You were telling me a bit about it at our brunch.
No life.
It's very different.
Boundaries were not allowed.
I remember you saying that.
They weren't, it wasn't a thing. Like, there was no, would you do this? It's like, do this. And there's no like, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I can't do this because it's 5:15 and I end at 5. Like, that doesn't exist in the world that I was raised in. But I'm one of the people that think it's wonderful that, like, finally we've created some boundaries around this, because quite frankly, you are a better person showing up for work if you go do the things that nourish your soul and that feed your soul and that are important to you outside of work. Because if you don't get to do those things, you're going to come into work with this resentful energy. I'm not going to get the best work from you. You know, this is something that's culturally changing slowly, okay? And I think some people take advantage of the new openness to boundaries, okay? And that's what I mean by know your place. Because if you are just starting out on a job and your genuine vision and goal is to be your boss one day, what are you doing checking out at 4 p.m.? You still got a lot to learn. You know? How are you going to stand out? Because there's a lot of people competing against you for that same role. So what are you going to do differently? Work ethic is so important. It's so important. So, and work ethic will get you a long way if you really lean into it and you develop really strong work ethic. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think you can have really strong work ethic and also have strong boundaries. So I think boundaries are good, but sometimes people take advantage of them. So you really need to be, like, honest with yourself about what your priorities are. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm interested in your take in terms of staying in spaces for a certain amount of time until you see the return on your investment. Or do you get what I'm saying when I'm introducing this question? Like, knowing when it's ran its course and it's served as much as it can. And I know sometimes with opportunities or even internships, you won't see the return until like 6 months down the line, right? So do you have any advice in terms of, like, I don't want to say waiting things out, but kind of seeing if something is worth the long-term investment with your time and your energy, especially, like I was saying, with internships or anything that's like shadowing or things like that?
Ask yourself a few questions. Did I learn something from this today? Yes. Okay, great. Did it positively reinforce my goals, beliefs, and values? Yes. Okay, great. We gained something from this today. Then the most important question, if you're in an internship especially, I was just talking to a young woman who has done some freelancing for me and who I mentor and who's kind of new to, she just graduated recently and she's looking for a job. And she was in the running for this job and she had done this internship. And I said to her, okay, I'm going to ask you something. When you look up to the top of that company, do you want her job? No. So what are you doing there? If you don't look up with like a little bit of awe and aspiration, and it doesn't like light a fire a little bit, then I might bet my money that you might be in the wrong place. Or it's the right place at the wrong time. So those are the things that I would be asking myself. And by the way, that concept of looking up and do I want this job came from another great mentor of mine. And it's great advice because you want to continue making sure that you're intentional with the work that you're doing and they're actually working towards what you want. So if you're looking up and you're like, I don't want that job. I couldn't do that. That's not for me. Then get out. Because what are you doing? Unless you just want to like plateau and coast, which like that's fine if that's your prerogative, if that's your goal. But if you're like yourself, where you big ambition and aspiration and you really want to make a mark and, you know, look up. Do you want that? Yes, keep going. No, next. And also, don't spend a bajillion years creating something, especially in today's world. A lot of great entrepreneurs talk about this also. Time to market is so important. How quickly do you go from idea to execution? That actually is like one of the highest predictors of success. It's not how great the idea was. It's how quickly did you get to market. Because the whole point is you get an MVP, a minimum viable product market, and then you test, learn, optimize. You iterate, and make it better, right? So don't be so precious. Done is better than perfect. So also everyone's definition of what perfect is different, so you can't control that. Get it to a comfortable place and then put it out into the world. And then do the next thing and then tweak it and do it again. Do not sit on something for too long. It's quite literally one of the biggest indicators of success of a concept is how quickly did you get it to people. Well, doesn't go out the gate perfect, but you got there faster than everybody else. So that's really important. And I know that's really hard for many creatives and artists in particular, because you're like, my body of work. Yeah. And I'm not taking away from that. Like, it's still your body of work. But I think we have to think about the way we build a body of work in this age of like really advanced technology that's more advanced than us, basically. You cannot spend 3 years on something, like on one nugget of an idea. You're doing yourself a huge disservice. So I think it's also really important to, and by the way, this is something that I continue to try and practice every day, and I'm not perfect at it, but balance the creativity with logic and strategy. If you really want to be a working creative that makes money and gets paid to do artistic things, you cannot do that with just the art. You have to be strategic. I mean, think about Andy Warhol and the factory. Like, that is a great example. He was like, oh, I see an opportunity here. I'm gonna like mass produce these prints, basically. Make a lot of money, right? So if you want to be a artist that feeds yourself through your art, you cannot ignore the logic and strategy, or you will keep circling back to that place. Take it by the reins and go. And And I think that's like the beauty of, I really think that's the beauty of being here. But also, it's not just New York. Going back to technology, with AI, you have more information at your fingertips than ever before. You could create an app in 2 hours, maybe less. You could have an idea and realize it very easily. So resourcefulness is like the most valuable thing you have. If you can think in a resourceful way, you can pretty much make anything possible. Fall down, rest, reset, get up again, do it again. And you'll notice, if you track like what your life looked like every time you sort of rose again after those moments, you're like so much stronger than you could have ever imagined, right? So I think don't let the setbacks define you, because it's inevitable, especially in a place like New York. It's so tough. It's so competitive. A lot of people are not nice to each other, and everyone's in it for themselves. So toughen up, set your boundaries, have really great work ethic, and don't be like so alarmed if it doesn't work the first time or the second time or the third time. The people that make it here are the ones that fall down and get up again, fall down and get up again. And that's what we call grit. And so I'll leave you with 2 book recommendations that I think any human being should read, but especially hustling creatives in New York City. Probably my 2 favorite books of all time. The first is Mindset by Carol Dweck. Incredible book. And she basically talks about the science behind the fact that your thoughts and your mindset shapes the outcome. So if I think bad things are going to happen, bad things will happen. If I think good things are going to happen, good things will happen. If I approach everything with a positive mindset, positive things will happen. If I walk into a space with a negative mindset, negative things will happen and come into my orbit. But she talks about this in terms of like in the context of psychology and science and how it's literally proven, okay? And it changed my life. So don't get me wrong, I've gone through really hard times where it was really hard to channel that positive mindset. But, you know, luckily surrounding myself with the right people, the right resources, rereading that book as many times as I need to until it's like in my body. But that's a really good book to just like lock in and make sure that you're thinking in a way that is going to help you get where you want to go and isn't hindering you from that. And then Grit is also an equally as important book. That's by Angela Duckworth. It's an incredible book because what she talks about is the fact that the number one thing that predicts success, it's not how intelligent you are. It's not how many hours you put in on the job. It's how gritty you are. And grit has a lot to do with resilience. The grittiest people, they fall down, they get up again. They fall down, they get up again. And I also love New York because I think that we live in the epicenter of grit. Mm-hmm. It's like, can you sort of mentor yourself also?
Yeah,
Discipline. And hey, I don't have it in every aspect of my life, but when it comes to my work, I am very, very disciplined. Yeah. So it's also a muscle that strengthens over time. 2010 me would be like, I don't even know what she's talking about, you know? So these are things that you learn through experience.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you holding space with me.
Of course.
Being authentic and sharing, a bit behind the curtain. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of What's the Rate, the Resource Series. I'm your host, Breon Lyons, and we'll catch you on the next episode.